fantasy football to online sports betting, you have no doubt seen the ads everywhere. They're on TV, they're online, you see them on billboards as you're driving around the city. And if these are hobbies for you already, you probably know that the costs can add up. Now, entertainment has a cost, it could be a pleasure for you, but it could also affect your financial health. Tyler Thielmann is president and CEO of online lender Spring Financial, and he's here to talk about some of the dangers, some of the watchouts when it comes to sports betting. He joins us from Vancouver today. Hello there.
Hey, Bruce, thanks for having me on.
So are you a fan of sports or just a fan of helping people get a handle on their money? What do you come to this conversation from? What perspective?
Well, actually, I think both. I've played sports my whole life. I still play today. So I'm a big fan of sports, and I happen to work in the finance space. So kind of find myself helping people think about money and expenses and credit and all of those types of things.
There are a lot of ads, as I mentioned. There's been a lot of regulatory changes over the last couple of years, depending on where you live. We're a national show, so it's different by province. But talk a bit about what you're seeing in terms of this moment in our culture. People are betting more on sports than they have before. Do you think it's because it's easier?
Yeah, sports betting has exploded really, in my mind, since the start of this decade. And it's really been fascinating to watch. 10 years ago, you would never see a single sports betting ad anywhere. And now you cannot watch like 3 minutes of sports highlights without being inundated with odds and lines and like the bets you should be making. So it's actually really wild to see how prolific it's become.
Now, you also include these various fantasy leagues in this conversation. And in fact, you quoted a number in terms of how much that costs the average individual to participate in a league like that. What was the number, and why do you think this is a relevant or material cost? Because it feels like kind of a different category.
Yeah, I mean, I should be really clear. I think that fantasy is great, and I think getting together with your friends and doing a fantasy pool can be super fun. And I think it can be, it not necessarily it is, but it can be kind of that gateway into like deeper sports betting. So 15% of Canadians age 24 or 25 to 34 participate in fantasy, and they on average spend $556 each when they're playing. So it's not nothing. It's $500 of after-tax dollars. So it's expensive. And for a lot of people, it probably leads to a lot more sports gambling or just betting on everyday games.
So let's go to the other end of the spectrum, gambling. And for some people, gambling money they do not have. What's some wisdom on how to know if this is actually fits not in the fun thing to do category, but in the problematic behavior you might want to look at category?
Yeah, so I'm no addictions expert, and couldn't claim to be, but I can tell you at Spring Financial what we do see quite often now. People apply for personal loans, and when applying for a personal loan or Spring or really any institution, quite often now you would share your bank statements with that institution. It's very common when you're getting a mortgage or really any type of financial product. And quite often what we will see is many repeated transactions on the same day. So with Bet365, you could see it like 35 times in a row on the same day as small dollar transactions. And it definitely leads to some questions for the people who are looking at granting you money or giving you that financial product. And that's where like the concern arises.
Sure. We often think of lending decisions being made by a machine that looks at credit score and income. Like those are kind of two of the inputs. At Spring, is there a human that is looking at the transaction pattern, or is there software that's looking at the transaction pattern? How would it come to your attention?
Yeah, it could be either. And so typically when you're building and when we build these types of technologies at Spring, we're looking at, we create models and algorithms that will adjudicate the most percentage of people possible. And then just a small percentage are getting flagged for manual review, which means that a human will look at it. In either scenario, these models are trained to look for things like this: repeated behavior, unusual behavior, and they could get flagged for further manual review. So it's humans and it's machines. They both see it.
And if the applicant has a credit score of 840, their income exceeds their expenses, there's no other ridiculous red flags, is frequent transactions on sports betting relevant, or is it become really relevant when you're talking about a client that maybe like they're in the low 600s and their income's a bit spotty? And where does it fit in terms of a relevant variable?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it really points to a truth in our industry. Every application is nuanced and different. And so there's not like a one size fits all rule. And you're kind of hitting the nail on the head. Like there's nothing wrong and nothing wrong with doing some sports betting if you're within your means and it's something you like. It's, to me, it's the equivalent of going to see a movie or doing something else with your time. So there's really nothing wrong with it. I think for people, the thing to think about is, as a percentage of my income, does this look, if I was looking at this, would I think this is responsible, right? And it's generally just, is pretty easy to answer that question. And if you make a lot of money, you have a good credit score, and you want to spend $100 on the weekend doing something you like, there's nothing wrong with that. And I don't think it would cost you anything when it comes time to get some sort of financial product.
The simplest way in which that behavior would show up in your credit score is your inability to pay the minimum payment on a credit card on time, every time. Are there other ways in which that behavior would show up in someone's financials that they should be paying attention to?
Yeah, I mean, if it's getting in the way of you being able to make your regular obligations at the time you're supposed to make them, that's really going to impact your credit score and your ability to obtain future products. Again, because more information is being shared nowadays when applying for financial products, and I'm talking about bank statements, oftentimes it's just, you don't even need to see a credit profile. You just see the bank statement and you'll know, okay, this is, some interesting behavior. This is standard behavior. And it gets compared to an average or what's commonly seen. And so it's quite easy to flag when these types of things are coming up.
Some of our listeners directly may feel like, oh, he's talking about me, or they know someone in their life who may be betting more on sports than their family cash flow can accommodate. What advice do you have for them in terms of bringing this in check?
Again, I'm no expert on addictions or behavioral modification, but I would say that, if you personally feel like, this is me or this is out of hand, I'd recommend to anyone to, there's lots of resources publicly available. Look it up online, get some help, think through it, tell a friend about it, hold yourself accountable, all of those things, and trying to find what is the right measure for you personally.
Yeah. Nonprofit credit counseling, that's a major source of upset for a lot of the clients that we have, because they're, spending money that they don't have, that they need for, groceries and rent and all those sorts of things. Last words in terms of providing context for sports betting. You have said, harmless if in small amounts, but could be a concern for your financial health. What do you want to leave people with?
Yeah, I mean, I think people just need to remember that the overall financial picture is what's taken into account when you're applying for any product. It's not just Spring Financial. It's really anywhere you go now. There's more and more information. It's way different today versus, if you went to the cash machine and went to the casino, nobody really knows that. But if you're doing all these transactions that are imprinted right onto your bank statements, like there's really no way to, hide from it. So be aware. I think awareness is probably the biggest one. Try and stay within your means, try and understand what your means are, and enjoy yourself and have fun and do things that you value.
Very helpful stuff. Tyler, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Bruce.
Tyler Thielmann is president and CEO of online lender Spring Financial.